Today, I have a lot to cover with you. I've got a lot of different questions and perspectives and things that I want to share. And it all kind of stemmed from a conversation I was having last week. I was in Springfield. Last week, I did my free life in Springfield on Wednesday. And Tuesday night, I came into town and I went to dinner with a guy named Adam Grotti. Now, Adam runs a team there and they do 600 to 700 transactions and largely by repeat and referral. It's a really great team. I really enjoy Adam. He's not a coaching client of mine, but I love his perspective. And I was sitting there just talking to him at dinner and asked him, how things are going. And he said, I got to be honest, it feels harder now than it did in 2008. And when he said that, it kind of surprised me because if you know Adam, like many of you, he's an optimist. I don't know that you really rise to the ranks of being in the top 1% in any industry and then stay there if you don't have some optimism, some type of positive expectancy towards the future. And he wasn't complaining. I want to be very clear. And yet he said that it seems like everybody who's in the market right now, or the vast majority of the people who are in the market right now, they have to be in the market. And it's because they're being relocated. They can't afford their house anymore. Somebody passed away. And what I was hearing him say was essentially we are experiencing very much what I consider to be an aspirin market. And many of you know that I make the distinction between aspirin moves and vitamin moves. Aspirin moves are pain ending. So somebody died, they're getting divorced, they can't afford the house anymore because of too much debt, whatever, but they're moving away from pain. And then there are vitamin moves. Vitamin moves are life enhancing. We're getting married. She's having a baby. We're building our dream home, whatever. And so essentially what he said was right now, it feels like we're just trekking through the mud. And I said, it seems like very much like an aspirin market. And he said, yeah, that's exactly right. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that because sometimes I think we get caught in these like bold laws and we start hurling things at each other like, oh my gosh, complaining equals garbage magnet. And it's like, well, that's all well and fine. And yet at the same time, we need to acknowledge where we are. The thing about leaders is that leaders tell the truth. And what that means is that they see things for how they are. Okay. They don't make them worse. They don't make them better. They just look at them for how they are. And so it got me really thinking, though, because as he continued to talk, I said, have you seen a significant dip in your business? And he said, no, we're currently carrying 60 files. Now, it's harder than ever to hold those files together. And yet we are still very much focused on hitting the goal for the rest of the year because there are still a lot of people that need our help. And it reminded me of the story of the company. It's a shoe company in Chicago, and there's all different renditions of this. I don't think it's a true story, but they send two salespeople to Africa. One goes to the West Coast, one goes to the East Coast of Africa, and their job is to sell shoes. First salesperson gets there, looks around, calls back to headquarters and says, I've got bad news. We need to cancel all the shipments that we have coming here because no one here wears shoes. And that salesperson's like, I'm out of here. I'm going back to Chicago. The other salesperson calls back and says, I need you to double my order because no one here wears shoes. And that person stays there, and long story short, they become the top salesperson in the company, break all these records. And I think it all boils down to this question: what is the perspective that you currently have on the market? And I think that if you look at it through the lens of my all-time favorite number, my all-time favorite number is 24. My all-time favorite number is 24 for two reasons. Number one, my wife was born on June 24th. But secondly, it's a constant reminder to me, and that is that life is never happening to me, it's happening for me. Life is never happening to me, it's happening for me. And I think that when we look at the market of today and where we are, maybe it's time that we drop the term lead generation and we start thinking about it in terms of need generation, finding people who need your help. And it's an interesting perspective because when people are coming to me in our calls, and I never want you to hear that I'm like being evangelical or judgmental about it. And yet when they say, oh, I'm behind on goal or things are really hard or whatever, from now on, my mind kind of goes to, so are you telling me that there aren't enough people in your market that need your help? Is that what you're saying? That there aren't enough people in your market that need your help? And I wanted to prove this point. So I reached out to Jenny and I asked her to get me some numbers, specifically one. And I asked her, how many homes have gone under contract in the Tulsa market? Because Tulsa is kind of a good, I think, sampling because it's not too big, it's not too small. But how many homes have gone under contract since September 1st? And she texted me this morning and said that there were 644 homes that went under contract. Now, one thing I want you to understand is that every home represents two sides because there's a buyer and a seller, right? And so technically, if you multiply that by 2, there were 1,288 sides that went under contract. And I know that I've done this exercise with many of you before, but again, I want you to be very clear on the answer to the question, what is your perspective on the market? And if you looked at it through the lens of, okay, well, if I were on goal today, September 25th, how many contracts would I need to have gotten in the month of September? Now, if you're a rainmaker, you might be saying, well, that number is 20. Okay, cool. So if we look at 20 is how many we needed, and we divide that by 1,288, the number of sides that are available, it's 1.5% of the market. 1.5%. So if the market was 100 slices of pizza, in order for you to eat as much as you need a slice and a half. And the reason I share that with you is because I want you to always come from the perspective that there are more than enough people who need your help. Now, if you were in another industry, right? Like if you sold, jet skis or things of that nature that are very much something that are a nice to have, not a must have, well, we'd be having a different conversation. But there's a reason that this industry, by and large, was deemed essential during the pandemic. Food, water, shelter, right? 3 primary needs of survival. And we sit right there at shelter. So don't allow the noise of the market, whomever it is that's talking, buyers, sellers, the news, your broker, I don't care who it is. Go look at the facts. Are there enough people out there who actually need my help for me to hit my goal? Yes or no? And if you look at contracts accepted as just that metric, look at what percentage of market share you ultimately need. And here's the thing that I share with people. If that number is under 20%, then you have no reason to freak out. And I want every one of you to just take the perspective of the second salesperson. There's no one here wearing shoes. What an amazing opportunity. And anytime that story in your head starts going about how hard it is and there aren't enough people or whatever, just bring it back to, are you saying that there aren't enough people in the market that need my help? Is that what we're saying? And I think you're always going to find that your answer to that question is no. And so that led me to another question. And I love this question so much. It was one that came to me yesterday in hot yoga. There's some reason that when I'm suffering and feel like I'm about to die, like I'm right on the edge of like, okay, this is it, I'm going to die, the best questions come to me. And this is one that I've been asking myself since yesterday. The length and strength of your why is being tested. The length and the strength of your why is being tested. Do you intend to pass that test? And I think that this can go in a lot of different directions. I think sometimes as it relates to the achievement of a vision or a goal, we get too caught up in the target and not enough in the actual reason why we're doing what we're doing. And you all have heard me say this, the relationship that you have with your why, the reasons that you intend to succeed are very much the same relationship that you should have to your hygiene. And what I mean by that is that if you woke up this morning, brushed your teeth and said, I'm good for the rest of the week, I don't think very many people, including yourself, would want to be around you. And so hygiene wears off, and we've got to keep it in proximity to us by brushing our teeth a minimum of twice every single day. The relationship that you have with your why is something that you've got to keep near and dear to you at all times, meaning that if it gets out of sight, it is out of mind. And I would encourage each and every one of you to get some type of a routine where you are consistently and never endingly bringing this into your focus so that it is ultimately governing your thoughts, feelings, and actions. Now, I think that if you want to really nail this passage from the one thing is something that's so important. And I'll read this to you. It says, if everyone has the same number of hours in the day, why do some people get so much more than others? How do they do more, achieve more, earn more, and have more? If time is the currency of achievement, then why are some able to cash in their allotment for more chips than others? The answer is that they make getting to the heart of things the heart of their approach. They go small. Going small is ignoring all the things you could do and doing what you should do. It's recognizing that all things matter equally and finding the things that matter most. It's a tighter way to connect what you do with what you want. It's realizing, this is the real key, extraordinary results are directly determined by how narrow you make your focus. And I think this is really illustrated in this quote right here. I got this from Bruce Lee. It says, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. Now, here's the thing I want you to understand. Is that focus, right, is what ultimately controls feeling. Feeling controls action. Action controls results. But it begs the question, what controls focus? And many of you have heard me say this before. What controls focus are the questions that you're asking yourself. So if I said to you right now, what does your left foot feel like? Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it dry? Is it moist? Is it, are you one of those dudes who never clips your fingernails or toenails? So you got like velociraptor toenails pushing against your sock and it's super gross. But none of you are thinking about your left foot before I ask the question. Now you're focused on it and you can feel it. Are you with me? And if you're one of those dudes, I trust that you'll take the action to get that fixed because that's nasty. Don't do that. And so when I think about the competition, right, the competition in your market or the competition in my market, here's my spin on this quote right here. I fear not the man who has asked 10,000 questions once, but I fear the man who has asked one question 10,000 times. And that's by me, Jay Freezy. That's my nickname, Jay Freezy. What's the primary question that you need to be asking as it relates to your own success? So that we can narrow your focus, so that we can get really clear on what ultimately matters most. And what I find is that we're spending so much time asking and answering all these different questions that our focus is like a pinball instead of a golf ball. It's just getting smacked around all day instead of traveling down the fairway. And so when I was in production, right, when I was a team leader, for example, I asked one question over and over and over and over and over. How do we get to 10% listings taken in this market? That 1 out of every 10 listings passes through this office, because I knew that if we did that, number one, the agents would be making as much money as possible. Number two, the ownership group would be making as much money as possible. We would win. And I knew that it would allow us to tell a story that would attract the right people. And there's really only 2 ways to win at that game. You've got to find the listing agents and recruit them, or you have to train the listing agents that are in your office. Now, I'm not sharing this with you because I believe that buyers are unimportant. They are very important. It's just, I think we can all agree that listings are the bait that attract the buyers. Okay. So if we're talking about how do we strengthen your why, how do we narrow the questions that are, or the question that you're primarily asking yourself, I think you want to look at where you are, where you want to go, and then ask this question. If I can only measure one metric that would tell me that I am succeeding, on the path of where I am to where I want to go, what would that singular metric be? Because that's going to drive your primary question. Now, the last thing I want to share with you is this one right here. And this comes from one of the ancient Stoics in like Greece, way before any of us were even conceived or thought of. And the question is, how long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself? How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself? And here's what I really mean is if this is you right now and you're traveling along, right? What's going to be the catalyst? What's going to be the rock in the gravel? Imagine that this is a baseball traveling along the ground and the baseball hits a chunk of gravel and then shoots off into a completely different stratosphere. What's going to be the catalyst for you to finally show up in your life, in your business, in whatever area is coming to mind as I talk to you today, that's going to convert you into the hero version of yourself, the best version of yourself? So today, I've asked you a lot of different questions, right? But just to recap it, number one, what's your perspective on the market? Are you telling me that there aren't enough people that need your help to hit your goal? Is that what you're saying? If that's the case, go check the facts, just like what we did in Tulsa. And then, are you narrowing your focus to what really matters and thus eliminating what isn't? And if you want to know how to do that, the primary question that you should be asking, look at where you want to go. What's the singular metric that you need to measure that would tell you if you are trekking that path? And then lastly, when are you finally going to demand the best of yourself? When are you finally going to smack that rock in the gravel and become the hero version of you? When is that finally going to happen? Because here's the thing I want each and every one of you to understand. No one is coming to save you. It is up to you. And you are one decision away from a brand new life. So I trust that you'll take what we shared here today and put it into action, put it into focus. And let's be some of the few who win over the next 3 months versus the many who bitch about how the market kept them from getting what it was that they wanted. Thank you all for being here today. I'll see you here next week. And I'm excited to see what we achieve together in the fourth quarter. Bye-bye.